Hey there, everybody. My name is Andrew Greenberg. I've been a professional game developer since 1990. I'm executive director of the Georgia Game Developers Association. And I'm also the commissioner of the new Georgia Esports League. So, with my panelists here, I plan to speak on the collegiate side of it. My panelists having been held up in, I don't know, maybe they're in the finals of whatever tournaments they're participating in right now. I will speak to what I know. But I'm glad to answer any questions. Would love to make this an interactive dialogue with everybody, so do not hesitate to ask questions, move forward, whatever. Be involved in this, and if you have responses to these, again, my area is game dev and collegiate. The pro side is not my expertise, so glad to defer to other people's knowledge on that. So, contrary to what I believe, this is not esports from punk to pro. It is from pub to pro, so that works for me as well. So as I said, I've been a professional game developer since '90. I've worked on a lot of different games, tabletop role-playing games like Vampire the Masquerade, computer games, Mall Tycoon, Star Trek, Starfleet Academy, Warhammer, Final Liberation, my own Emperor the Fading Sun series, and so forth. But what's been true about all the games I've developed is that my favorite part of them is always the community that grows out of that. When we did Vampire the Masquerade long ago, we created this great community of gamers, storytellers, and more. It was exciting, really enjoyed that. We've tried to replicate that in all the games we've done since. Now I'm in this role with the Georgia Game Developers Association. Georgia is now the 7th largest state for game development in the country. We have some great companies here, including Hi-Res Studios, that does Smite and Paladins, Blue Mammoth that does Brawlhalla. You'll see a bunch of Georgia studios downstairs demoing their work. So we'll have Tripwire Interactive that's going to be on site showing off Killing Floor and their new VR Killing Floor incursion. Just all sorts of exciting projects coming out of the state. So with the association, we promote the industry. We work with the state on ways that the state can support game development. We believe this is the media of the 21st century. And as you know, Georgia has become the place for film. It also wants to become the place for games, interactive productions, digital media in general. Because really, this is the big new media area. So films, Georgia wants to be part of all of it. Someone in the crowd had asked before we started recording, what role is the state having in esports specifically, but game development generally? I'll kind of add that to the question. And Georgia, surprising some people to hear this, has really been in the forefront of its involvement. And Georgia is one of the states that really takes game development seriously. So we who are fans, gamers, etc., know the role that games play. We look back in the history of technology and we see that a lot of people were attracted to tech because they want to make games. The classic example, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, who made games for Atari before they started this little company nobody's ever heard of called Apple. And this is a classic facet of the game industry. It used to be that students who wanted to learn about technology did so because they wanted to work for NASA. They wanted to go to the moon. Now people who study technology in K through 12 are doing it because they want to make games. And now even more than that, we're seeing because they want to play games and they want to build the best rigs, understand what's going on with their computers, and so forth. So the desire to make games and now to be involved in competitive gaming is actually a spur to education. It is driving people to want to learn more about what they're doing and understand it more completely. Within the game industry, we see this because we used to have to hunt high and low for good programmers, artists, community managers, etc. And now so many companies are hiring out of their community. If you're an intelligent fan, that suddenly a road into a great career. I was just on a panel with some of the Blue Mammoth guys, and they're saying that about 20% of the people who work at that company were hired from their fans. These weren't just people they went to a headhunter to find a programmer. These are their fans coming on in. Hi-Res Studios is doing the exact same thing. We're seeing this across the board. So I've been a fan of esports pretty much since day one because I'm a geek. And we actually put on the first big esports event in Georgia about 5 years ago. The very first Smite tournament was at a convention we put on called Siege. It's the largest professional game development conference in the South. It's actually the Southern Interactive Entertainment and Game Expo. But before they started doing their big high-res expos and Smite World Championships and the like, they actually did their first competition at Siege. So we're very glad to be able to say that. Before Turner was doing E-League, we were having all the Cartoon Network folks out at our Siege events and so forth, seeing how this was all done. So we work very closely with colleges to promote game development, programming, art, design, all of these different skills, writing, because these are all the skills game developers need. So we are introducing the Georgia Esports League this fall with a tournament at Siege on October 8th. It's an invitational to Georgia colleges. We already have 8 colleges signed up, and they're not the usual suspect, not just the usual suspects you expect. Yes, it's Georgia State, Kennesaw State, Georgia Tech. We also have Georgia Southern, Wiregrass Tech, great schools from around the state who aren't usually thought of in this, like getting involved. Why? Because not only are we offering scholarships, but we're the first esports league to also offer, as a prize, paid internships at game studios. So Hi-Rez and Blue Mammoth have promised for the best, for the qualified competitors who do the best in their tournaments, they're going to take them on as interns. So we love this. It's all about building another great generation of game developers, and excites us a great deal. So we've been in talks with a lot of the different collegiate level groups who are trying to get into esports, and I love this because frankly, I think that team sports have a very positive place in society, but I think that team esports have an even better place. Not only do they draw people into an educational pathway, tech, I mean if you're going to game, you want to understand your rig and how it's working. You want to understand why your bandwidth is to suckage. You got to actually figure out the technical side of what you're doing. And so we love the educational pathway. But the thing that I have found most fascinating about esports, and this is true on every level, is that the camaraderie is so real. Yeah, we have trash talking in esports, just like there's trash talking in sports, but in sports, you can just be an athlete. To be successful in esports, you have to be a lot more than that. I mean, yeah, you can make money off of the prize pools and survive that way, but really, the bread and butter and the focus of this is your YouTube channel, your sponsorships, your live stream, whether it's on Mixer or Twitch or wherever else you're live streaming. It's on endorsements and so forth. And in order to drive other people to look at what you're doing, you have to get the support of your competitors. This is the one sport where you're going to see Dignitas promoting energy and vice versa, and everyone talking about everyone else. You're never going to see the New York Yankees promoting the Los Angeles Dodgers, much less the Seattle Seahawks in football. But in esports, we really do have to support one another in order to be successful. And I think that respect that we see is very real. You love gaming with people, you love to trash talk them, you can't believe that they headshot you, they had to have been cheating. We know they had to have been cheating, okay, they weren't, but we're going to say that anyway. But that respect stays very real and legitimate, and especially the higher up you get in the professional rankings. I love going down to Turner for the E-League. How many of you are from Atlanta? How many of you have been to one of the E-League tournaments down at Turner Studios? Okay, those of you who haven't really should. Those are a great experience. Turner has really spec'd out that studio space. I personally think that Turner does the best televised esports in the world. You can argue about whether the best live streaming, they've got great numbers. Their televised experience is the best. But that studio is incredible and the experience is great. And it's wonderful seeing the competitors talk to each other, interact. And it's not like the two teams are going to their separate locker rooms and ignoring each other until they clash on the floor. They're talking, they're hanging out, they talk after they've just gone to war with each other on the computer. So this is one of the areas that has so impressed me, generally about gaming, but especially on esports, that there really is a code of conduct, written and unwritten. And one of them is that the competition, the anger, etc., stays in the game because you need each other once that computer is turned off to support your professions, your careers, and so forth. For doing a collegiate league, we're focusing on varsity teams. You have to be recognized by your college, which means you have to abide by your college's code of conduct above and beyond anything we say. Because, I mean, if you do something, say stuff that's not allowed, get into any sort of altercations, and like, it's your school that's punishing you, it's not us. And who wants to be expelled over a video game, no matter how competitive that video game actually is. So, we have our written code of conduct as each schools, but we see the unwritten code of conduct being even more important. So what have I seen as the unwritten code of conduct in both amateur esports and professional esports. One is that the competition stays behind the computer. That anger doesn't feed over to what you do later. Two, that you do support each other. You do tweet out what the other folks are doing. You do support other events. Yeah, you're focusing on the games you like playing, but you're still going to say, hey, I really enjoy, if you're a Smite player, you'll say, hey, I really enjoyed watching this Brawlhalla competition. You'll try out the different games. I mean, how often, there are people like Bo Jackson who can do a ton of different sports, but really, in the athletic community, how many of those folks are there? Esports? That's almost all of us. None of us really just play one game. We might focus on something. I wish you were focusing on my games, but that's a whole other story. We do play everything. We do try everything at some point, and it gives us a greater respect for what those other people are doing. I mean, if I'm no good at CSGO, I'm not just saying, well, that's a crap game because I'm no good at it. I'm saying, that's a little bit out of my skill set. I'm going to go back to Hearthstone and enjoy that. Same for CSGO players who can't get the intricacies of Hearthstone down. You have that respect for the other people's games and their passions. And I do want to go deeper into questions with this, but I do want to talk a little bit more about that passion point, because in the end, that's really the heart of it for everybody. Me coming from the game development side, people get into game development because there's games that they want to play that aren't made yet, and so they go out trying to make those games. May fail at it, but that's the driving focus. It's a passion to play those games. The fans, it's the same thing. The people who rant the worst against your game are the people who are often the most passionate about your game. So therefore, you want to interpret them, find out what's going on, find out where that vitriol is coming from, and direct that passion back into supporting the game. And for the competitors, that's really the big part. I mean, we know how many folks who just play the game will never make any money doing it. We know that it's a passion to drive people to compete and compete and compete and really dig into the game and have those championship games, which we all love to watch on Twitch or wherever else, that are so much fun. I mean, that emotional, that visceral emotional moment of, I love the Smite Championships. Have any of you gone to the Smite Championships? All right, 3,000 people live at the Cobb Energy Center, a million more watching online. That's just a great experience. It's such an emotional high for everyone involved. That final experience, the games that are going on are just a great final plus for everybody, be they designers, be they competitors, or be they all of us who are fans. So, and I did promise I'd talk a little bit more about the state support. So let me do that very quickly. Again, Georgia, we're very fortunate that the state takes game development seriously. So you've all heard that Georgia is now the #1 state for film and TV production in the country, and really the space in the world for these. And really the key factor behind it is there is a tax credit for film that makes it very affordable to shoot films here. Also, we've got an incredible skilled workforce. We've got the airport, Hartsfield, and so forth. But really it's a tax credit that leads to this $9.5 billion industry in Georgia that grew out of nothing. That same tax credit applies to video game development. It's structured differently, so you have to have it as payroll. You actually have to have people working for that company in order to take advantage of it. But the state has seen that video games are really where media and entertainment is going, and they want this to be a core place. So when the tax credits went into effect in 2005, we only had 8 studios in the entire state. And that was a big growth from the 2 that had been here in 2000, mine and a friend's, way back when. So we've seen this great growth. 2005, we have 8 studios. Now we have over 120. The Entertainment Software Association now ranks Georgia as the 7th largest state for video game development. I think when their next numbers come out, we'll be 6th or 5th. And very legitimately, we've got great companies here. I've already mentioned a number of them. Hi-Rez, Tripwire, Xaviant, Blue Mammoth. Cartoon Network has a great game studio. Adult Swim. Who's played Adult Swim games? Oh, check out the Adult Swim games. Those are a blast. But this doesn't just stop with traditional video games. The state has also become one of the first to incentivize virtual reality production. So we're seeing an explosion of great VR games out of here. Tripwire Interactive, I mentioned before, their Killing Floor game, their next one is Killing Floor Incursion, which is one of the hottest VR games. It's going to be a Facebook exclusive. Facebook is very much supporting this game, really promoting this game. We also have CCP. They're best known for a game called Eve, but they're doing a VR game called Spark here in Atlanta. You can look up videos of that. It's a lot of fun already. We have a company called PulseWorks that does VR rides for the Air and Space Museum and other locations. Great space experiences using virtual reality. So we're seeing the cutting edge of technology coming out of Georgia already. The third thing, and this is where the esports side comes in, is that just like the incentive applies to TV broadcasts, it now applies to esports broadcasts. And DreamHack's one of the first groups to be utilizing this to make this a more effective event for them. So the fact that we already have some of the biggest esports events in the world, Turner E-League, Hi-Res Expo, the Brawlhalla Championships, are just a starting point. We're already I believe, one of the two biggest esports locations on the East Coast, us in New York. And with that credit, we expect more groups like DreamHack, MLG, and others to want to do their productions here in Georgia and build that gaming community. That's why we're doing the Georgia Esports League. This is going to be a great place to be a competitive gamer. And we want to get people started in high school. Eric Thomas was supposed to be on this panel. He's doing a high school championship right now at DreamHack. We're going to do the collegiate one, and we expect folks to move through these ranks and become very successful professionals. We've already seen esports competitors out of Georgia earn huge amounts of money. The very first Hi-Res Expo, I think there was a kid out of Cartersville who made, I don't know what it was 1.3 million divided among 5 people, so $250,000 in a day, or 3 days of gaming. So we'd love to see a lot more of that happening, more of those competitors coming out of here and forming teams here. And I think this is a great place for teams to form. We have the airport. I mean, you can go very quickly to competitions all over the world, direct flights everywhere in the world. You have big competitions right here that you can profit from, and you can be part of a very active community. So if you're going to form your professional team or looking for a home for it, we'd obviously recommend doing it here in Georgia. So with that, if you have questions, I'd love to answer them, and more importantly, I hope that we can get a dialogue going with other audience members who might have feedback on anything. Yes.
So one of the recurring challenges with esports popularity is, do you consider esports people athletes? Right? There's this perception, they're gamers, why do I care? What changes do you see coming to the landscape of esports with the emergence of things like large-scale tetherless?
So the two-part question. One, there's a constant question, are esports competitors athletes? And then the second part, what changes are becoming as people get tetherless, aren't tied necessarily to sitting behind their PC? VR is obviously something every esports company is looking at as a great possibility. The definition of athlete, I think, has always been an interesting one, because you'll hear people yelling, are folks who shoot rifles competitively, is that athletics? Are people who just play golf, is that really athletics as opposed to boxing, football, etc.? I think that the real harbinger of this is the Olympics. So are we going to end up seeing esports as Olympic quality competition? And it's already being included in the Asian Games, which in many ways has been the lead into the Olympics, where they do kind of the testing ground. Are these worthwhile of ending up in the Olympics? Just like in NASCAR, there really is a physical component to what you do. Yes, there's a machine that does all the work, just like we have computers to do the processing and so forth. But those people have to be in shape. I think that just walking around the floor at DreamHack is a great experience. There's this bad, false stereotype of gamers as grossly out of shape, et cetera, et cetera. You walk around DreamHack, you look around this audience, you're seeing a relatively fit audience. You're seeing a relatively fit group. It was hilarious. I was at an event Thursday night. Todd Harris, the COO of Hi-Res Studios, was speaking there. He says, how many of you are gamers? And of course, everybody raises their hand. He says, this is an attractive audience of gamers. Not because that's weird, but because that's common. Gamers are not this negative stereotype. And especially the ones who are into competitive gaming. Because as you know, gaming for 8 hours straight is not an easy thing to do. Driving for 8 hours straight at NASCAR is not an easy thing to do. There is a level of fitness that's required. You see this at all the professional levels where they have a training regimen. They are physically, keeping themselves physically fit because there's a physical component to what they're doing as well as a mental component. And that's one of the things I love about esports, is that tie between physical and mental is direct. I'm never going to say there's not a mental component to physical athletics. There is. But again, so much of that is muscle memory. It's also true in our gaming. We got to get that muscle memory down of what we're doing. But there's a very clear mental role in everything we do. There's strategy constantly being put forth. You can't rely on a coach to just give you your strategy. We've got those. And it's not just second-to-second decisions. We're making microsecond-to-microsecond decisions when we're playing any sort of competitive gaming, and no one else can do that for you. You have to be sharp for that. Yes, there's muscle memory, but there's also that conscious role that is required all along. And as for the growth of the changes we're going to see in esports, I think it's very true. We are going to start seeing a wide array of esports and competitive gaming that we haven't seen yet. I mean, there's already a lot. I love the fact that you can play something like StarCraft or Street Fighter or some of the kids' games that are now in competitive gaming. But yeah, VR, I love what CCP is doing here with Spark. You are going to be seeing that sort of competitive gaming. And you're going to see, we have a company here called Motion Reality, which does military VR simulations, but they're looking with the entertainment space. We actually have a video up of what they've done on our YouTube channel. If you want to look up Georgia Game Devs on YouTube, they do this very intricate military police training sim where they can put 6 versus 6 people in a room about this large, and you can walk around all through it as if it's a real environment. It's all virtual, and they're doing this with a mech game. We show their mech game online, people playing it, and it's a great experience of folks walking through as giant mechs through a cityscape, crunching through the buildings, and battling one another. And I just love that idea. And then imagine if I can be in this room and my competitors are in Shanghai walking through as giant mechs through a cityscape, blasting each other. Not only is that a fun experience for me as a player, but for audience, that's awesome. That's a great thing to watch. So I think there's little doubt that esports are going to just continue to explode. They're exploding now, they're wonderful now. But I don't think we've even begun to touch the levels of where they will go, both in the number of games you'll be competing in, the types of games you'll be competing in, the number of competitors, quality competitors, and especially the size of the audience. Yes?
So you talk a lot about the growth in the industry, especially here in Georgia and I guess around the world. Can you talk a little bit about any of the concerns around like synthetic identities or cyber crimes that, especially with all the stakes with esports and these big, large bounties that people are winning? Are you guys experiencing any of that, or is that a concern at the state level?
So the question is involving the security of esports competitions, especially in regard to the identities people have online to determine prizes. Obviously, cheating in any way is a massive concern of the competitors, making sure that any microsecond advantage is a significant advantage, but are you also safe from folks outside of the game? Are people inside the game cheating, or folks outside of the game cheating? And one area you didn't talk about that's of great concern is also gambling. I've already met with folks like MGM Casinos. They've had esports events at their casinos, and for them, eliminating cheating is a key component. It has to be fair, and nobody's going to bet on these. There is betting on esports already. It's mostly in Asia, and I have no idea the legitimacy of what they're doing there. The casinos here that are taking book on esports events are very focused on ensuring that there is no cheating at all. Not just that there is no cheating, but there's no perception of cheating. For the companies, this is also crucial, the developers, I should say. If people believe that it's easy to hack one studio's game, if CSGO suddenly becomes easy to hack and you can ghost through walls or shoot people through walls, etc., you're going to see drop-off in popularity immediately. So folks are staying constantly aware of it, hunting down any rumors that they see. I know within the industry, it's a key consideration. Where I would also love for it to be a key consideration is within the people who set up events, be it a large-scale event like DreamHack. I know they look at it here, but at small LAN parties, small LAN events where there's like a $100 prize, you also have to be aware of it there. What are you setting up as a server? Who has access to your server? What can go onto it? How are you ensuring that there's nothing installed on somebody's machine to give them an advantage? For us, with our Georgia Esports League, we're fortunate in that the companies are donating the machines the players will be playing on. So we can keep the close watch over them. They'll be playing on. We'll have for Brawlhalla, the two competitors will be right there. They'll get on the machine, we put them on the machine, get off, and they won't have any chance to put anything on. Again, the people playing Paladins, just monitor them to make sure nothing's coming on. And it is really a two-part arrangement between the developers and the folks who run the competitions to make sure that that's taken care of. Identity hacking is a big issue everywhere, and that's a constant effort of security on all levels. And I am not aware of any examples right now where people feel that has hurt them on the professional esports level. I could be wrong on. I've been looking into this while we've been forming the Georgia Esports League to protect everyone on the college level. And again, we're in a good position because everyone's on those machines, we know where everyone is, but we want to have virtual tournaments as well. So it's partnering with the right folks. So we've got AVGL out there who's here this week and doing have a strong platform, testing that platform out. Is that a good one? NACE is another group on the collegiate level that's trying to form a platform. The more we look into these, the security of those platforms is going to be a key part of the competitions down the line. So yeah, I mean, everyone involved in esports needs to be aware of security concerns. And I would say at the top levels, most assuredly are aware of it because they can kill what they're doing. It's not going to kill esports if one company has a problem. It will kill what that company's doing. So there has to be that attention paid to it. And I think the same thing will happen on any tournament. Any tournament people suspect there's cheating will cause issues. And in the US, gambling on this will grow. What the MGM casino folks tell me is not only is it great to have people bet on these, but what are called prop bets, where people can bet on like, who's gonna be the next player killed? How many headshots are there gonna be? Just these weird, outlandish bets are limitless in video games and can be completely tracked by the computer, so they know with authority who's won these prop bets, and they're very much looking forward to it. So as the gambling industry tries to move into it, they're really going to be focusing on the security of the event to make sure there's no cheating. Does that answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything else? Yes?
I can hear a little bit, so it might not be in tune with the nature of the discussion, but how long do you think it'll be before video games are integrated into real sports? See, the thing about it, but being competitive in video games is that you have the opportunity to, like you said with the prop bets, you have their definitive numbers. You know, you can't have a half a headshot or something that was it shouldn't have registered the headshot, but it wasn't headshot. So, like I don't know, things like sensors in the pads to see if it was touched or behind the net. Like, you have in soccer realm, you have cameras that can control, I guess, the viewing and judge whether or not the ball went across it. Where do you see video games integrating real life sports in the future?
So the question was, where do we see video game technology integrating into classic professional athletics, or just athletics in general? And I'll go back to, you did miss a conversation we had before, our esports competitors, athletes. I come down on the yes side of that. But the answer, in my opinion, is 2 years ago. So the Madden series of games are made out of Orlando. Yes, I know there are a lot of Madden haters out there. I love the team who makes them. I think the Madden games have been very good. But what fascinates me is how much they have, in Madden itself, the Madden video game has influenced the play of football. And not just the play of football, but how we now watch football. So a lot of the things that they show up, the line moves and so on, a lot of those are taken straight out of video games. They've started to change the way they... So originally with Madden, the focus at EA was try to replicate the TV experience. Now TV more and more is trying to replicate the video game experience. And athletes are taking their skills from playing Madden directly into this game. And you hear this constantly from coaches on a high school and college level, that their players who grew up playing Madden are better than the ones who didn't, because they have an instinct for all those strategies you learn through Madden, playing hours and hours of Madden, that 16 football games are not going to teach you. And now there are all these videos on YouTube of most video game-like moments from professional football. So we've already been seeing that incorporated on in. I personally think that the way they do what is it, UCF, what's the main fighting sports now?
UFC.
UFC, thank you. Are really taking a lot of their camera angles and way they set things up from video game from fighting games. So much of how they're structuring their experience is straight out of the video game experience, trying to replicate that for their audience and being more exciting experience. Now, as far as tracking devices and et cetera that they can put on the players, that I'm not really sure about. There's always a lot of different pushbacks on whatever sort of technology. We saw the camera, the helmet cams and the like that disappeared and came on as a quick thing. I think you will see more and more of that, but I also see you're going to see it implemented more and more in the training. I mentioned motion reality before. They have a golf VR simulator that's a great training experience, and actually promote it for people to practice their golf skills when they're not in an area they can actually play golf. That's where I think you're going to see it more and more, and I think we already are, with people using video game technology, VR technology, and the like as a practice tool before the main competition in classic sports. Does that answer?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? All right, so how many of you are getting ready to compete? How many of you are competing this weekend? All right, how many of you are going to go professional in a few years? All of you, come on. All right, there we go. At least one pro here in the room. All right, well, I've been involved in the game industry for a long time, and I'm very excited about esports. I think it's one of the great developments we're seeing out of it. It's building the community. It's creating a passionate community, very interested in supporting one another. I think we barely touched where it's going to end up. So thank you all for joining us today, and enjoy DreamHack. Oh, I'm sorry, one more question.
So, touching on your experience, as you pointed out, esports has kind of a limitless palette. Are there any niches that you wish it would fill creatively?
And that's a fascinating point, because the things that can... So the question is, are there niches in esports that haven't been filled yet, where we've got a chance to do that? And I think there are. I'm a big fan of strategy games, and right now, yes, StarCraft is like big, but that's the RTS. I want to see some more of the classic sit and think video games come in. So we've already seen chess, grandmasters versus the computer. So we know there is a digital component to that. I want to see those more contemplative games brought into the competitive arena. I think we'll get more of those as the technology and the user interfaces, especially to make that happen, come into being. One of the big problems with strategy games and turn-based games and the like is if one player drops out, the whole thing's messed up for everybody, yada yada. How do you get around that? There are definite ways to do it. So I want to see more of those contemplative thinking games, the more chess-like aspect of video games brought in. We've had children's games starting to come into the competitive arena, and I think that's going to be a great area. Games that allow kids to interact more and more. I would love to see that expand out and have children able to have a community that they really enjoy being a part of. And finally, in video games, we have a strong area called educational games. Games for education, edugaming, and so forth. Edutainment is another term for it. And I think games that have a more clear educational purpose coming to the esports side would also be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to some of those coming out in the future. So, yes?
Do you think people will eventually get over the fact that, augmented reality, you lose a little bit of privacy, and that you might have a camera on a pair of glasses? Like Google Glasses can, because, well, the commercial side of Google Glasses can, because of the fact that people didn't want to be videotaped all the time. But do you think that the society will eventually get to a point where they don't mind having video of themselves, and it affects them positively, and that they can have an extra screen or extra info or a conversational tool throw in their visual side of living life?
So the question is, will AR have a greater role in our lives? Will there be less of a concern over the invasion of privacy brought along with it? A few different points on that. One is, I don't think that Google has failed just because of privacy concern. Yes, that was raised. I think it failed because there are no killer apps that anybody cared about. If they had ever found a commercial use, they would have sold them all day long, no matter what the privacy concerns were. Second, in a public space, we unfortunately don't have an expectation of privacy. In this room, we're in a public space, And theoretically, any part of it can be recorded. He's just filming me, he's not filming y'all. But that's something we accept. Private space, completely different question. So how do you know when someone's recording you in a private place, private conversation, etc.? That's still gonna all have to be worked out. But I think as those AR apps come across, we're gonna suddenly see it more incorporated in our lives. I think Microsoft has done a great job with the HoloLens. If anyone's had a chance to play in the HoloLens games, they're a blast. They've done a great job, and they're just the prototypes of what can be done already. So that is a definite area where esports can have a lot of fun. We need to have more rugged controllers for those. I wouldn't want to wear a HoloLens in a competitive environment yet, but they are great fun. Just to see this room suddenly come alive is an amazing experience, whether seeing the whale come out, seeing the robots shooting at you on the wall and you've got to blast them. They've all been a lot of fun so far, so I'd love to see more. And the next big thing, of course, is MR, mixed reality. Bring a lot of these together. And I think that's another area that will come out in an exciting way.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you all very much.